Hello everyone, what's up? Today I am going to explain Undead Paladin novel chapter 4 and 5. So, let's begin. Chapter 4, Helping Hand. Insect wings beat like thunder as mandibles clacked, snapping open and close as they swarmed toward us. Between their wings, electricity began to build, crackling along their carapaces as multifaceted red eyes glimmered in the faded light of the world. "Those are terrifying," I found myself saying as I walked over toward where the elemental snake was coiled around herself, still unleashing a concentrated gale into the sails as we tried to pass through the passing clouds. "Ugly bugs," a gale that was trying to impersonate a voice told me. I looked over at Quirixilus and saw that somehow one of her eyes had slid over from her head to along one of the coils and was staring at me. "I don't know what's creepier, the eye moving along your body or the bugs," I told her. There was the sound of whistling winds around her, and I decided to take it as laughter and not her being insulted. That I had never fought before wasn't that much of a concern, as I found myself sinking into a crouch, something my various coaches throughout life called the athletic position. Knees bent, weight balanced, poised on the balls of my feet ready to act. The haft of the axe felt good in my new hands, and even though the slit in my visor restricted my view, I didn't feel worried. The first of the buzzing bugs came flowing down with its cracking mandibles that snapped shut with a crack like a gunshot. Muscle memory pushed me, instinct moving me as I snapped the blade forward and the bug split in half, which showered me in gore and guts. Nobody ever talks about this part of fights. Being covered in steaming piles of guts isn't sung about enough. Scylla invertebrate, level 4. Experience earned. "No enmity at least," I muttered as I kicked its corpse out of my way, sending pieces of it scattered around the deck. 4 more of the creatures landed on the ground, their wings still humming with electricity. A whip of fire snapped, and pieces of medium-rare bug began to hit the deck, smelling oddly delicious. Nylaris cackled like a true villain as that snaking line of fire continued to send pieces of body scattering around. A bolt of lightning hit my chest, electricity ran along my limbs, and I felt my body spasm a bit. That was it, nothing else. 3 more bolts hit one after the other, and aside from a bit of a glow starting on the armor, there were no other side effects of being struck by lightning. As the bugs stood there looking confused in a buggy way, mainly tilted heads and their mandibles hanging partly open, I bisected the first one. Their confusion didn't last long enough for me to kill the other 3. They scattered like roaches exposed to the light. I chased after them, stomping one of them, crushing its legs as it tried to get away. A second one leapt at me, wings fluttering to get closer, as its long mandible snapped shut on my left forearm. Muted pain came from the crushing blow, but it was nowhere near the levels it should have been. Anger pulsed through me as I stared at the hanging bug that had turned my arm into mulched meat in a can. With a wordless cry, I lifted my arm up, straining under the weight, and slit the bug across its thorax. Its mandibles opened up and it fell to the ground in a pile of goo as the third bug slammed into my chest, the sharp points of its jaws piercing the breastplate like it was tissue paper. Black blood flowed out from my vented chest piece, inky black and smelling like the grave. Its mandibles pried open and metal screamed as more gore flowed out of me, drenching the insect. Rude. I slammed my axe home in its head. The corpse dropped to my feet and I batted it away, red creeping into my vision as I looked to the final attacking bug. I was generally a chill dude, but there's only so much maiming a man could get before he got a good head of steam. I stomped forward, black blood gushing out of my wounds as the bug tried to escape, bolts of lightning flickering out to splash uselessly against me as I reared up and brought the axe down in a devastating blow. Sharp steel tore right through the carapace and into the wooden decking below. The monster twitched and shuddered a few times, bleeding out, and I got another alert that I swatted away as I drew my sword. It was a clean draw, rasping steel on leather as the blade leapt to my hand. It felt good, right, a nice comfortable weight as I stalked over to the crippled bug and drove my blade straight down to finish it off. "I should be freaking out right now," I told Quirixilus as she blew a gale of wind out that sent a dozen bugs flying away across the sky before they landed on the deck. Undead have limited emotional variance. More advanced, like yourself, have all the emotions, but the big surges like fear, anger, lust, joy are all muted. You'll feel them, just not as fiercely or suddenly. Makes them great warriors, Nylaris said conversationally as she waved her staff around her head and her whip of fire slashed apart dozens of the bugs. You don't seem to be worried about these monsters. The words came dryly as Nylaris seemed to be having fun directing the fiery whip around and sending burnt-apart corpses to the ground. These things are weak, and their experience is almost nothing for me. I can sit here farming them all day and get nothing from it. So, you're not in danger? I asked as I looked down at my broken arm, punctured breastplate, and the blood that still pumped out of my chest and stained the front of my chest. Seemed a bit rude to have me getting cut up while she stood there without worry. Technically, I could be killed. More likely we would have the ship ripped apart around us and I would fall to my death, unless Quirixilus saved me. Then why do you have me fighting and being maimed? You have to earn experience somehow, Nylaris said with a shrug. Can you fix me? I asked, pointing at my ruined armor and arm. Nylaris shot me a puzzled look. Of course, you're a soul sitting inside of a body. The body is just a vessel. It's easy enough to fix. Which was great to hear, since being a walking, gutted, bleeding corpse didn't sound awesome. Now, you might want to look out. Here comes the brood mother. Nylaris punctuated her point when she placed the smoldering tip of her staff against my shoulder and shoved me away. The ship rocked, bucking out from under my feet as something heavy hit it. Quirixilus screamed in rage, the howl of a tornado and scald cat wrapped in one. I turned just in time to see the wind elemental abandon ship. She could fly, which would have been nice for myself. I mean, how hard would it have been to attach a few wings to my back? I asked out loud, even as I instinctively placed myself between Nylaris and the monster. Said monster looked like the cross between a Volkswagen bug and a regular bug. It was just a really, really big bug. Massive wings fluttered, and the breeze created stirred our now limp sails, but the energy they generated worried me a lot more than the little ones had. Everyone is a critic. Do you understand the challenges of aerodynamics? Without magic, nothing would be flying aside from those fat bees, which don't use magic, somehow. Nylaris was muttering complaints behind me, but I could feel the buildup of something. It caused the hairs along the back of my neck to rise up, while pressure built like standing in front of a storm. Just a minute, that's all I need, Nylaris told me, confirming my thoughts that she was up to something diabolic behind me. I kept my eyes locked on the hill of electrified carapace and wondered how this was going to work. I was already a wreck, lost my axe somewhere beneath the creature's bulk, gut spilling out of me while black blood still pumped out. How much of that did I have? I fought off the intrusive thoughts and took a step forward, intent on trying to keep the monster's attention as long as I could. Mandibles clacked shut, and if I wasn't some type of abomination, I think my eardrums would have blown out. It screeched as it rubbed two legs together, and then it lunged for me, mandibles open to snap me in half. I rolled toward it, and the passage of the razor-sharp jaws was enough to cause puckering. I landed hard, but turned into a smooth roll, whipped a sword around and thrust it up and into its vulnerable lower chitin. Steel pierced about 2 inches, and a small stream of yellow gore trickled over my blade. The brood mother shook hard, and the blade was ripped from my fingers. Actually, the blade and fingers were ripped free from my palm. The deserting digits and shiny sword flew over the side of the ship and was lost to the ground below, sure to make some poor fellow quite confused. I stared at my now stump of a sword hand and would have swallowed hard if that was possible. Instead, I leapt again, planks shattering behind me, as a leg punched straight through the deck and into the cavernous hold below. Finally, Nylaris' skeleton guard decided to help out, marching forward in a clatter of bone and metal. As the brood mother rampaged after me, intent on turning me into paste, the skeletons began to hack at the insect's legs. I was pleased to see they had as little success as I had. It whirled, and bits of bone went flying everywhere as her guard was destroyed in moments. How much longer? I tried to keep from sounding hysterical, but the bug was getting closer and closer to finally pinning me to the ship, like a bug on a board those weird collectors did with the butterflies. which I thought would qualify for irony. Couldn't be sure since I'd never figured out irony properly. Mind is really floating around right now. I should try focusing on the fight. 10 seconds, Nylaris, in contrast, sounded cool and calm, and I risked a look behind me to see a growing storm of red energy surrounding her staff as sweat beaded across her inhuman features. Pain finally filled me. Hot and biting, it hit as the world turned blue-white. I felt weightless for a moment and then slammed hard into the deck, stunned as I looked down at the glowing red-hot metal. Cooked flesh smoked and hissed, while the black blood had flash evaporated in a burst of stench. A neat fist-sized hole was now right where my heart should have been. "Ow!" I howled as I got to my feet, feeling that burning anger through my chest as I staggered upright. The brood mother turned to look at me, and she got the same quizzical look her children had right before I had exterminated them. Something stirred inside of me, not the body, but me. I could feel the difference, the flesh of the corpse sip. Chapter 5. That's against the rules. I'm almost done. Nylaris sounded bored as something was pulled through my neck. Friction burns started on the inside of my skin, still muted and dull compared to normal, but highly irritating. I tried to open my eyes and found that nothing came through and speaking was a non-starter. Instead, while she did whatever it was to my neck that felt like rope burn, I looked inward at the list of notifications that waited for me. Even blind, the alerts couldn't be avoided. They lurked right on the edge of my attention, and the moment I observed them, they appeared in their full glory in front of my view. Skill discovered. Soul strike. Grade legendary. Use bits of your soul, the very essence of your being, to strike out at your opponents, bypassing most defenses. Scylla, Brood Mother, level 10. Experience earned. Feat earned. Kill a being 10 levels or more above your own. Grade common. Experience earned. Lesser soul crystal. Feat earned. You have died. Again. Last time you earned this. Grade rare. Experience earned. Common soul crystal. Reading the legendary skills explanation made me wince as I felt inward toward that ball of whatever it was that I had been aware of right before decapitation. It bobbed there, aware and floating about, but less than it had been. There was a missing chunk, hard to quantify, but I knew instinctively that it had been lessened. Guess using my own soul to hit things isn't a good idea. The words came out loud and I nearly jumped as my new raspy voice scared me. That was supposed to have been in my head. Vocal cords are slightly damaged along with brain function. Only an idiot would think using their own soul for a weapon would be a good idea. Nylaris, I was coming to learn, had this amazing ability to ridicule while sounding like she was observing a fact, like that the sky was up and the ground was made of dirt. Didn't know it was my soul. I rasped at her and I rubbed at my throat, with the hand that was missing most of my fingers. Nubbing over the rough stitches, I could feel where my head had been removed and sewn back on. Of course you didn't. She paused there as if she was about to say my name. But she had never asked me my name, and I was sure she was realizing now that she didn't know my name. Theodore, but you can call me Teddy, I said as the awkward moment continued to stretch out. Using your soul to forge weapons and kill things is a bad idea. You only have so much soul, and there's always more monsters. I got a legendary skill for it, though, I protested. The silence that came after was deafening. I licked my lips and wished I could see, as the silence just kept going. And going. And going. Did she leave? It would be rude to leave a recently deceased and currently blind man by himself on a floating ship. Nylaris had so far seemed to have a distant relationship with the morals I thought were the norm. Who steals a demon? You still there? I ventured. Legendary? Was the only response I got. Couple of feats, too, I threw in. Of course you did. I'm going to finish repairing your body. You should be able to see soon enough. Nylaris's fingers pressed against my throat, right on the stitches holding my head to my throat. Flesh folded inward, and her finger went inside of me. I gagged as something scratched inside of my throat, and then heat blossomed, filling my throat and then upward, over my jaw first, then cheekbones, before it rested inside of my eyes, a pressure that was like someone was trying to push my eyes out from the inside. Sight snapped into being between one moment and the next, and I was treated to the sight of Nylaris's beautiful face inches from my own. She was covered in yellow bug guts, her hair coated in slime, and a long cut ran from the corner of her eye to the jaw. Her clothes were a frayed mess that were hanging on by literal threads, and she had a long finger inside of my throat doing something. Take a guy out to dinner first. At least that's what I tried to say. What came out sounded more like a garbage disposal. I hope that wasn't a rude comment about my appearance, Nylaris said, eyes narrowing, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It could have been the heat from whatever magic she was pumping through my body, or it could have been fear. I chose to believe the former. Her finger popped out of my wound with a spray of black itcher, and she tusked as she wiped her hand on a piece of relatively unstained clothing by her hip. I tried really hard not to stare. Didn't succeed. I am a weak man. Now, we are in need of a new ship, Nylaris said as she rose and stepped back, and I got a good look of where we were. It was on the ground, which I suppose was nice. What wasn't nice was the ring of burning and blackened ship that had once been our ride. Fight with the bug was a little harder than you thought, I asked as I slowly got to my feet. I'm sure I should have been in pain, but mostly I just felt itchy and sore. The muted feelings to an undead body was pleasant when it came to fighting. I was sure that being gutted wouldn't feel particularly pleasant, nor with that bolt of lightning through the chest. Your blow weakened it, and my attack was stronger than I had thought, Nylaris said matter-of-factly as she walked through the burning wreckage. I followed along after her, looking around at the dark landscape around us. There were trees, I think, out there. Hard to tell with the muted moonlight, as all the clouds overhead had begun to cover the area and limited the light. You blew up our ship? Our ship? It was my ship, Nylaris said, though she didn't sound broken up about it. Was it borrowed like Randall the Demon? I said with a chuckle. Nylaris didn't respond. A suspicious silence fell between us, and I felt a smile start to pull at my lips. Nylaris, did you steal that ship? Borrowed. I don't think you can return it, I said. I kicked a piece of lumber over and was rewarded by a chunk of bloody, burnt bug. This area is plagued by pirates. We'll find a new ship to borrow easy enough. Nylaris sounded confident about it. What happened with Quirixilus? She was bound to the ship. She agreed to work with me if I freed her when my quest was done. I fulfilled my part of the bargain a bit early, is all. Nylaris said as she reached into a larger-than-normal piece of wreckage and pulled out the axe that I had last used. Here, you can use it with one hand. She offered it to me and I took it with my one good hand. What's a soul crystal? I asked as I felt the comfortable weight of the axe in my hand. I had never used an axe before, not even to chop wood, but it felt good in my possession, like that's where it belonged. A soul crystal, Nylaris stuttered with the word. Yup, got 2 of them for the feats I achieved, I said. Nylaris recovered, breathing sharply through her nose as she tried to straighten her burnt and torn-up dress without damaging it further. They are powerful and rare ingredients, often used in spells. Similar to experience, which can be crystallized and used to barter, one can do the same thing with their soul. So I can absorb these soul crystals to repair my soul from the damage done by my legendary skill. Nylaris looked like she was ready to have a stroke. Envy filled her face as she struggled to keep the naked avarice from overcoming her. Yes, the word was whispery and strained, but she managed to get it out. How do I claim them? Just think on it, Nylaris said, turning and walking away as I set my axe down gently and thought of the 2 feats. A lesser and common soul crystal, one for each of the feats I had accomplished. A golden haze appeared around me, lighting the world up as shimmers of energy filled above my outstretched hand. A pair of luminescent crystals appeared, cut into angled pillars, and fell into my waiting palm. They were heavy, but the moment they hit the metal gauntlet, they awakened a hunger in me. Since I'd showed up here, the entire world had been a muted gray fog. For bits and pieces of time, anger had managed to boil up and out of me, but it had been hardly anything worth mentioning. Even my straying eye in Nylaris was more habit than actual desire. This was desire. It was hunger and thirst and lust and need. My fingers clenched instinctively as that restless orb of power that resided in the flesh suit I called a body reached out and ate. Euphoria filled me, my knees buckling, as a hoarse cry of exhilaration managed to work its way through my clenched lips. Pleasant electricity scoured my body while I feasted on the robust meal in my palm, golden motes floating free as I drank deep of the crystals. Theodore Massey. Race, undead. Soul. Strength, 22. Endurance, 17. Speed, 10. Intelligence, 11. Perception, 7. Vitality, 0. Mana, 0. Soul, 76. I came out of the fugue as I stared at the floating list of numbers in front of myself. Cold water couldn't have ruined the high of the recent feeding any better. Hey, that's against the rules, I complained. When did people get to kill monsters and earn experience only to have their stats go down? What? Nylaris asked, turning around from her walk through the remnants of the ship. My stats went down. I tried not to whine, but it was hard. Any afterglow was reduced to cinders as I grabbed my axe. I didn't even know why I was mad that my stats had gone down, but it felt wrong. That's supposed to be awful, Nylaris said. What? Nylaris said, turning around from her walk through the remnants of the ship. My stats went down. I tried not to whine, but it was hard. And with that, today's video ends. I hope you liked the video. See you in the next video. Bye.